groups that do this, like the Stanford Research Institute group, did an experiment where they tried to get people to predict what would happen, precognitively predict what would happen to copper futures. Well, they discovered if they said to them, okay, is copper, the price, there are three possibilities. The price of copper will go up, it'll go down, it'll stay the same. And if they said, is the price of copper going to go up tomorrow, intellectually they'd start to think, well, there's the Gulf crisis going on, there's this, there's that, and they could do no better than chance. But when they started to get accurate is when they said, okay, let's forget about copper. And what they did is they attached a symbol to each of the possibilities. They said if the price of copper goes up, they didn't tell their test subjects this. They just said if the price of copper goes up, it'll be a banana. If it goes down, it'll be an apple. If it stays the same, it'll be a grape. And then what they do to the person, they go, tomorrow I'm going to hand you a piece of fruit. What's the piece of fruit that you see me handing you? Well, the person didn't know what the pieces of fruit represented. But because they couldn't figure out, well, it's the Gulf crisis, so it'll be a grape, because that was no longer meaningful. They go, oh, I see you handing me a grape. And that's when they started predicting. Now, the point is, what they had to do there is they had to bypass the intellect, because the intellect gets in the way of the infinite self that knows all this stuff. And they also did this when they were doing remote viewing and having people, because if they gave people latitudes and longitudes and said, what is in the world at this latitude and longitude, can you describe what's there? People started running through their head intellectually what the latitude and longitude was. So what they did to bypass it is they converted latitude and longitude into binary numbers, which most people can't decipher. It's just a meaningless series of numbers. And they go, here's a meaningless series of numbers that represents a latitude and longitude. What's there? Then people could do it. So as I say, it's a complex subject. I could talk for hours on that subject alone, but that's just one example where, again, it involves tricking the infinite self, or tricking the conscious self, so that the intellectual self, so you can bypass it. Because the intellect believes in limits and doesn't think it can do these things and tries to reason things out. And I'm not saying that, I mean, reason has a role. It's just not all of who and what we are. It's just one part of the vastness that we call self. And there's another part that already knows all this stuff, and it's this, the knack is to get down into that part to access it. The fellow in the back of the room?
You keep referring to the book. Which book are you referring to?
Okay. What a good question.
Holographic Universe?
Yeah, I've got, you can come up if you want. I've got some, a flyer here on the Holographic Universe. They're selling it in the bookstore, and also a flyer on another book I did called Beyond the Quantum, so you can help yourself to those.
What's your reference on the Tibetan examples you gave? Any books?
Oh, okay. The Talpas?
Yeah.
There's a book by Alexander David Neal, Magic and Mystery in Tibet. There's a book by John Blofeld called Tantric Mysticism in Tibet. Those are two books that'll talk about that.
Say that all again.
Madam Alexandra David Neal. David Neal is hyphenated. N-E... I think it's N-E-E-L.
Yes. Magic
and Mystery in Tibet. She talks about the dance of Chad in there. And John Blofeld, B-L-O-F-E-L-D, the Tantric Mysticism of Tibet.
My question is addressed to the part where you said it's underneath the source that the infinite comes from. I think you just said, I can't remember your wording, so I was thinking about my question, but and how I was going to word it. But I've had two experiences that I think you could explain that I'm curious about. One of them is that I'm a homeopath, and some of my clients will say that I appear to them at night and work on them. I have no connection with that, no desire, no awareness that that happens. The other thing addresses when you were talking about consensus reality, where one time I thought I'd given my client sepia, and I'd actually given them sulfur. And they react entirely differently in the body, but I believed I was giving them sepia, and I said, well, you will experience that. And they did. And it blew my mind when I went to write up at the end of the day in their chart what I had given them. I went, it's not possible, I gave them sulfur. Oh my God, now they're going to have da-da-da-da. They had sepia results
until you changed your mind.
Yeah, so what's going on there?
Well,
she said, I'm on fire, I'm sweating, I think I'm going through menopause, and I was very aggressive.
Well,
what's going on?
you know, the holographic idea says that we're all completely interconnected, and I talk about this to a great extent in the book there are all kinds of studies like that. You can take, put people in separate rooms and hook one up to an electroencephalograph and flash a strobe light in the other, person's eyes, and you can say to the person hooked up to the electroencephalograph, tell me when the light is flashing in the other person's eyes. And consciously they can't do it. But in their brainwave patterns, people can register when it's flashing. And you can do all kinds of physiological measurements that show this tremendous interconnectedness that exists between people. I mean, not the least of which is this remote viewing. I mean, they're very controversial results, of course, but there are results in hypnosis that I talk about here where hypnotists have taken and they put, a hypnotist can put salt in his mouth and tell the person that they've hypnotized that they're tasting something, that they've just put something in their mouth. What does it taste like? And the person that doesn't have the salt in their mouth will say it's salt. They'll taste what the hypnotist is tasting.